In Buddhism, the concept of forgiveness is quite different from how it is typically understood in many other spiritual or religious traditions. In many Western frameworks, forgiveness is seen as a gracious act where one party absolves another of wrongdoing, often implying that the transgressor has been pardoned for their actions. This type of forgiveness often carries with it an inherent power dynamic, where one person is viewed as the victim and the other as the one bestowing grace. In some cases, this dynamic can even feel condescending, as if the one granting forgiveness is elevating themselves by letting go of the offense. However, in Buddhism, the approach to resolving harmful actions and their consequences is far less about absolution and more about understanding the true nature of suffering and purifying the mind. So let's talk about karma and the inescapability of consequences. In Buddhist philosophy, every action has consequences. This is the law of karma. Karma is not about judgment or a system of moral accounting imposed by some external force or deity. Rather, it's a natural law of cause and effect. When we perform actions, whether positive or negative, the consequences will play out in the future. These effects are not erased or bypassed simply through an act of forgiveness. In other words, forgiving someone in a traditional sense does not undo the karmic impact of their actions, nor does it erase the harm that was caused. The wrongdoer may feel forgiven, but the consequences of their actions are still there, woven into the fabric of their experience. This consequence may also play out over several lifetimes. This is where the notion of purification comes into play. Instead of focusing on forgiveness as a transaction that involves absolution or the removal of guilt, Buddhist practice emphasizes the purification of both the person who caused the harm and the one who has been harmed. Purification in Buddhism means cultivating understanding, mindfulness, and the wisdom to transcend the negative effects of past actions, whether in this life or across lifetimes. Thus, purification over forgiveness. Rather than forgiveness, the Buddha's teachings focus on purifying the mind and the heart through practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and ethical conduct. These practices are designed to help individuals let go of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, qualities that bind us to a cycle of suffering, samsara. When a person harms another, the focus is on the purification of their own mind. The wrongdoer must confront the consequences of their actions and, through self awareness, work to transform the harmful tendencies that led to those actions in the first place. The person who has been harmed is also encouraged to purify their mind by releasing any attachment to resentment or anger. In Buddhism, it is understood that holding on to negative emotions only perpetuates the cycle of suffering. By cultivating equanimity, compassion, and forgiveness within themselves, not as a transaction with the wrongdoer, but as a process of inner healing, individuals can overcome the mental and emotional residue of being harmed. This is not forgiveness in the traditional sense. It is a release of the emotional burden that comes from attachment to the idea of being wronged. Let things play out their course. Ultimately, the Buddhist approach teaches that everything in life is impermanent and interconnected. The events in our lives, including moments of harm and suffering, are not isolated incidents. They are part of the ongoing flow of causes and conditions. Buddhism encourages practitioners to allow things to play their course, meaning that one should not seek to manipulate or force the outcome of a situation through the act of forgiveness, but rather observe and understand the unfolding of events with wisdom and equanimity. This is where the Buddhist practices of mindfulness and meditation become key. By observing the mind and its reactions to harmful situations without attachment, practitioners can gradually purify themselves of the deep rooted emotions that bind them to past experiences. Rather than trying to forgive someone for their actions, the focus is on seeing through the illusion of self and other, recognizing that all beings are interdependent and that every action, thought, or emotion is part of a much larger web of interconnectedness. Furthermore, the Buddhist concept of karma emphasizes that individuals are still responsible for their own actions, and they will experience the results of those actions, whether in this life or the next. By cultivating awareness of one's own thoughts and actions, a person can gradually purify their own karma, thus reducing suffering for themselves and others. This approach places the emphasis on self transformation and the recognition that ultimate freedom comes not from forgiving others, but from purifying one's own heart and mind. In conclusion, in Buddhism, there is no forgiveness in the transactional sense of absolving guilt or removing karma. Instead, the focus is on purification, transforming the mind, releasing attachment to the past, and allowing events to unfold naturally. Through practices of mindfulness and meditation, individuals can purify their own karma, heal emotional wounds, and free themselves from an endless cycle of suffering. The Buddhist path emphasizes understanding the true nature of suffering and the causes of harm, not in an act of grace or forgiveness, but in the profound recognition that all beings are interconnected, and the only true way to break the cycle is through purification of the mind. Inevitably, transactional approaches like forgiveness sort of cheat the process, right? In other words, rather than allowing the karma to unfold and rather than just focusing on the aggressor confronting themselves and realizing that they need to change, and the victim also realizing that in their own way they've been traumatized and they need to learn how to work on that and release that, that sort of is a thing that's just sidestepped or not addressed properly. And that can become an issue because trauma can linger for a long, long time. And in the cases of reincarnation, it can transfer from lifetime to lifetime. So it's best to work on purifying yourself and just getting it all out of your system, whether you were the one who was the aggressor or the one who was hurt. If you enjoyed this message, please like, share, and subscribe. If you're new here, welcome aboard to Safe Space. You're returning. I'm glad that you're back. In the name of the Most High God, I wish you health, wealth, prosperity, and abundance, blessings and protection. Take care. Have a wonderful day.